Have you ever wondered where you're going to find your next architectural inspiration? Where are you going to learn about your favorite architects and the buildings that made them famous? From the guys that brought you the Architecture Rundown comes a brand new series called Who's That Architect?
Who's that architect?
Hi, my name is Bjarke Ingels.
None other than world-renowned Danish architect Bjarke Ingels. At only 45 years old, he has won a multiplicity of competitions, and at such a young age, he has been on the very top tier of the architecture list, ranging from many documentaries, films, projects, and books.
He's got more publications, educational degrees,
TED
ideas, blogs than you can shake a stick at. My man Bjarke really started the game out going crazy when he decided to create two housing complexes. The two housing complexes that really set him off, got him going where, no other architect dares to go, are the Mountain and the VM House. So we're gonna kind of go over those projects today, and we're gonna tell you about everything that's made this guy one of the greats.
So,
VM
we're going to
House.
start off with the VM House, his first complex that skyrocketed him to fame. So really quick, so what we're going to be doing for each one of these projects is we're going to be walking you guys through his presentation within his website, and then we're going to be critiquing his project and presentation schemes, and we're going to talk about what we think is successful, what we think could be done better, and what we think you guys should definitely focus on when it comes to his projects.
Yeah, not just that, being able to pull inspiration from a lot of these people that we're going to end up talking about, not just copying their work like we saw a lot of people do in school. They take this picture, create, copy and paste it and make the exact same thing. That's not what we're highlighting these people for. These are people that laid down groundwork and foundation so that we could make better architecture.
This is one of the things that I think Bjarke does the most successfully, and is one of the things that I think he's the most known for, which is his diagrams. His diagrams are so successful because of their simplicity and their ease to communicate simple ideas, not only to other architects, but to the general public.
I think the biggest thing that we have to kind of look at here is, not just the ease of being able to understand what he's doing in the project, but being able to commit to that idea. Taking, you want to have the V and the M in plan view, or from how his website says, whenever you see it from Google Earth, you want to be able to see a distinct V and an M and have X amount of units with X amount of square footage. The ability to do that without sacrificing the initial concept, as simple as it might be, is something that is going to be a strong suit whenever you're looking at his projects.
Yeah. So piggybacking off what Christopher said, so by easily manipulating two different volumes, you can create a multiplicity of projection lines, which can behave as viewing corridors, viewing areas. It creates atriums and open spaces that cut through different volumes to be able to activate public space and human interaction.
And not just that, you can program your build. I mean, he definitely did it, but you can definitely start programming your architecture a lot easier once you have a diagram like this. It says it in his description and his breakdown, and you can clearly see it with the way he decides to create facades and windows. He's channeling and funneling sunlight into the building, channeling views out, and then not just that, creating this undulating space that's a little bit more interesting to look at and gives a great interior.
And he's chosen to subdivide the different levels by color to keep it, playful and interesting within each one of the levels.
And lively, because if you weren't to have anything like this amount of light, as much as fluorescent light is, and the color itself, you could put a bunch of those strip lights down a hallway with white walls and a plain floor, and it's gonna look like some sort of either prison or a hospital.
It looks like a completely different project. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So,
you can see the small details here, making extrusion in the walls to create places for, placing objects such as bikes, or even utilize them as seating areas.
bicycles, which it's a big cultural thing in Europe, not
Yep.
just in Denmark, but in Europe in general. The bicycle is a big means of transportation. So the fact that he took that into the design, clearly he's a local, but that's something you should also play on the culture, the people. The architecture is supposed to improve the way of life, not impede it or take away from it.
Next, we have the Maritime Youth House, his first competition.
Yeah, it was his first competition entry.
Yeah.
Or his first competition winner, I should say. I'm sorry.
Correct. So, by using an otherwise flat project and lifting up the whole ground plane, he was able to create different programmatic spaces depending on the needs that he had. So for example, here, if he needed more space here, he can just lift up that area in order to create a bigger clearance. And then this also creates a more active public space for the ground plane above.
Yeah, it's something that we learn about in school, something so simple. Something is using a grid.
Yeah.
And being able to manipulate that grid is something that he took into place, and then did kind of like a Yokohama port terminal-esque thing to it, and played with these floor surfaces that then turned into roof surfaces, and then go back into the floor and seating and so on and so forth. It's something we take for granted, and then that we don't really decide to touch on. But when you do it so gracefully like that, it's something to kind of look at.
Yeah, I think it's very successful, and it kind of mimics water, right? Like the way that it undulates and looks kind of like a wave, right? It's a really good waterfront project in my opinion. And the fact that he has kind of like a double layer system where he has different things happening with different levels.
Yeah.
Maximizing on the efficiency of a single space.
Let's see. Does it say when they completed it, or when he was working on it? Because I actually want to see if he was inspired by the Yokohama Port Terminal, because...
No, I don't see it.
Okay. Well, anyway, it looks very Yokohama Port.
It looks very Yokohama.
You know, even down to the way this system works.
Yeah, the materials and the system.
You know what I mean?
And the whole concept.
Down to the rails, those railings, and then that inner detail of the filling of the rail. It happens a lot, I'm sure, but it's just something to look at and be cognizant of, that a lot of your favorite architects use and borrow and are inspired by each other as well.
Yeah, and I would imagine this type of formwork can easily mitigate rainwater.
Yeah, I'm sure that was thought about, but you can even see it in the pictures here.
Yeah.
That area, I'm sure gets a lot of water and probably gets a little pulled up, but I mean, the fact that they chose this slatted wood material is for that, obviously. But I mean, they did a good job, I guess. I haven't been on the inside, but who knows? I'm pretty sure we would have heard stories or anything like that of it flooding on the inside or leaking. So, I'm sure that's a challenge in itself. Being able to work out those details is something special.
Next, we have the mountain.
Oof. It looks like a mountain.
Probably one of my favorite projects from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his idea of housing and the way he's able to use this kind of new idea, or
it's like a new typology for a house, right? Why pick between having a garden space, parking space, and a building complex when you can stack all of them?
Exactly.
So I think it's a very successful project when it comes to the human scale, and the fact that he does not, I guess, discriminate any of the apartment units. Every single one of them has what the rest of them have.
Yeah, I think it's important to see that.
Double-headed spaces, loft areas, courtyard spaces, garden spaces. So here you can see a diagram simply showing the ratio from a housing unit to a parking. And this is what a typical complex like this will look like. And you can see his solution for it.
And the proximity to the VM house.
Yeah. So these two projects are adjacent to one another.
And go back one or two to 8.
Right here?
One more to 8. I mean, I guess you can see it there. But the way he's cutting, obviously if VM house wasn't his, he would have kind of thought of another way to do it. But the fact that he's able to play with the two facades that face one another and have a relationship is important.
Yeah.
Most of the time people just put a flat wall or whatever. This is my building, that's theirs. No communication.
Yeah, like in this corridor right here, right? He's respecting
Exactly.
his site and kind of like it alters like his whole design, which is something very important. I think designing in relationship to your context is one thing that a lot of like famous architects do not do.
Yeah, Rem. Huh? But anyway, no, I think like you said, that corridor, that creates this whole channel, and then these two buildings start to become a complex. So if he were to design on the other side, or if people were to come and design on the opposite side, you would think maybe they kind of play with the same form or similar materials. It's something big that everyone should think about, regardless of whether you're taking on that challenge of the entire complex.
So going back to what I was previously stating about the fact that every apartment has, I guess, different factors that many like high-end apartments have. By creating this waterfall effect, each apartment is able to utilize the roof plan or the roof area of the apartment below it. So for example, the apartments here in the bottom, their roofs become the garden space for the apartments on the top. And each one of the apartments has a view to the city. So there's nothing blocking, views, garden spaces, loft areas, double-headed spaces. So it's very successful as a housing project.
Something he gets a lot of flack for is simplicity.
But it works.
The idea of like recycling ideas, but
it works.
A lot of those ideas, like you said, the views, the ability to use things in a, I guess, efficient manner instead of, just, all right, stack it and then throw a guard in the middle, whatever. It's not a universally known thing, or if it is, it's not universally practiced. So it's nice to see it get pulled off here. Try to go to those parking shots, because he pulls off the same idea that he did in the interior, taking a banal,
especially with the color.
Yeah, exactly. Taking a banal space or somewhat traditionally boring space.
You can start seeing that here,
livening it up.
Like an otherwise, I guess, basic space can come alive by simply adding a different shade of color. And he uses basic colors or like primary colors.
Primary colors, yeah.
Which is, I don't know, it creates a very powerful effect in the interior of this building.
Well, because if I remember correctly, the idea was to use the parking for other.
Yeah.
Was to use it for other programs aside from just the garage. So. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the parking serves as, it is the entrance to the whole building, so it should be kind of like this grand journey, right? From when you park your car all the way until you go inside your house. So I think he's done a beautiful job at creating that journey for us, which is typically not what parking spaces do. Yeah,
typically it's a dark,
ugly
place that you just put your car in, or you get out and go.
All right. And next we have West 57th.
Ew. Pyramid.
So Bjarke Ingels group moved their practice, or I think he moved sometime in 2012. And this is one of his biggest scale projects, or I guess one of the larger scale projects at this time, or at that time, that he made.
77 square meters.
Yeah. And he picked the Big Apple. So this is a very new typology when it comes to like high rises.
This idea of stacking and, creating a strange form or a non-traditional form, as like you would see in New York. So traditional high rise, and then, being a little playful with the courtyard area, similar to what he did in other projects before, but you kind of cut that hole in the middle and you create a giant atrium for everybody.
And then by picking one of the sides, you're able to pitch it all the way up, which this allows all these, I guess, like units that will pretty much be there. This allows them to have balconies and views down to the river and the spaces below.
Yeah.
So
Now here,
what?
Here I think he kind of walls off the city a little bit.
Yeah.
So like where that peak is, the opposite side of it. He tends to do that a lot, which I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing, if it's a pretty thing to look at, but when it could be a little bit different or doesn't really blend too well in the context, maybe it could be a bad thing. Here I'm kind of neutral on it.
Yeah, here he's pretty much opening only to the river and kind of like closing himself off to the whole city.
Yeah.
If maybe he would have gotten this pitch and done it somewhere here and started angling down, he could have, I guess, projected to the city a little bit and also projected to the river.
Mm-hmm.
But this is nice, right? Typically, when you have a space like this, developers tend to extrude this out, and then all the apartments have a balcony all around, and then you kind of have like this communal walking area here, looking down at this atrium.
Yeah. Which
so
can be kind of
yeah, it's very typical. So the fact that he's done something like this, as simple of a move as it seems, it can be very provocative, and I think it definitely creates a statement. Like you said, you feel neutral about it. I feel neutral as well, right? Because I don't really know what to pick.
If you read into it, I guess a little bit more, the river is known as this like, I guess international, almost like a port would be in any other city. It's kind of like the trading area, the welcoming zone or coast for these cities. So I can kind of see obviously why he would do it like that. That's, just thinking a little bit deeper, which is something that's smart to do, is think a little bit deeper into context, like you said earlier, and culture. Yeah. What does that approach mean? That approach means something in the city and in the States. So it's something special that you need to take advantage of, which I think he did there. So
yeah, and I guess like the pitch profile or like the angle profile is a lot more inviting than having a hard edge,
right?
As opposed to like having like a typical like building.
Mm-hmm. And the interiors are nice too. They're warm and inviting, like most of his interiors. I've never seen like a bland interior done by him or their group.
Yeah. And the way that I guess like these two like
different profile
edges, like they create this like frame view of the river. I think it's very nicely done.
Yeah. And even the park and the landscape, like they could have just put something typical, but even there,
yeah, it's very organic, right? It strongly differentiates itself from like the rigidity of the building.
Yeah, or other known parks in New York, other known parks like the High Line or even Central Park. Central Park has a little bit more of that feel, but not even that organic. I mean, it's a pretty winding set of pathways, but
Yeah. So this is the view that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Which
it doesn't look like a hard edge, even though it's a massive building. It somehow looks like a soft.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because of the way he treated that edge. That's a detail that I'm sure they either worked on or worked out, was the detail of that soft edge, whatever that material is. It's probably like a thick metal that's kind of like lining the horizontal edge there, or the angular edge there.
Yeah. And you can see how like this peak kind of like pulls out to like these other peaks, right?
Yeah, it's nice. In context, it does well.
Yeah, I think so. This is actually one of my favorite projects from him.
Very nice.
To be totally honest. And then last but not least,
we have craziness.
The Toyota Woven City. So let's watch this video so you guys can kind of see.
I don't know whose idea it was, his or Toyota's, or
yeah. So this is a proposal for like an autonomous, efficient, and smart city.
with these
Any
like
other features?
layer systems,
Excuse me?
with like a layering system of how people progress, how people drive and interact with the city. So it's his first take on, you know,
I
his
guess like
typical,
urban, like massive urban development or
yeah,
city planning,
yeah.
which is it's very exciting to see. Kind of wish you could lower the volume a bit. So as you can see, they're very simple geometries, but I think they're very effective in the way that they're laid out and space plan. Everything has like a large natural light intake, very open.
Yeah, like if you look at it, the way he kind of talks about it is like this flexible network of streets that are broken down into various speeds. So you have one for like a walking speed, you have one for bicycle traffic, and then you have one for automotive traffic, so that people are safe and these autonomous things and vehicles, which I'm sure is it's going to be very prevalent in the city. People don't have to worry about colliding or clashing with those things in a negative way. They can only be to help. And there's a couple other interesting things. It has like that backdrop that you see is Mount Fuji.
Yes.
So
this is one of the things that I love about his presentations and the way that he designs. He's always paying attention and paying respect to whatever context he has. And it's so easily done by utilizing a multiplicity of simple moves, which is what he typically does, right? He finds a problem and he creates a very simple solution. And even if it's efficient and in the eyes of some other architects or people, you know, boring, repetitive, I think it works.
It works, and I think it's like a simple math problem. I think it's like if you take the idea of like windows, which we'll get to that in a second, but these same people that are complaining about, oh, he reuses this or he has a principle of architectural principles, like we praise other architects for having these 5 principles of architecture that every piece of architecture should follow.
Yeah, what was that? Something about Pilates and free facade.
Ribbon windows and like a rooftop garden or something
Like
like
an
that.
open floor plan.
What was that
Or
guy's
like
name?
getting a piece of paper and this is my building.
Yeah.
What was that? I forgot.
I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that guy later.
Maybe.
But see, that's what he does. He found a style, his list of like architectural principles and like a guiding set as far as context. Because there's architects that don't care about context and they're very strongly opinionated on it. But he, you know, leans into it.
Yeah.
And he's very cultured. He travels the world. He builds for around the world, and that's important to understand context and you know, culture when you are designing.
Yeah, so this is going back to what Christopher was saying about that he created different
Mobility types.
right? The typical like the car, the bike, and
The person. Yeah, and if you keep going through that, he kind of touches on like these blocks and grids, which we see also housing complexes, even when you see cul-de-sacs.
yeah.
You have a similar layout of some sort of hierarchy and
Yeah, so we can see for example right here the bicycle and then the person they have their mobility route within the interior of the city while the car goes to the exterior, right, leaving the interior spaces like completely unharmed and leaving them open for public space activation, and encouraging human interaction, be it the people walking or the people like strolling through on a bike.
There you go, woven block. It's like the Savannah Square, where if you've seen any gridded city of the past, they all have these squares.
Yeah, it's a very European style thing to do. Like this kind of serves like a piazza, right? Like a main plaza, and then you have kind of like your city around it.
Yeah, I think and that kind of looks like if you look at a thing of Savannah and you just put one of these strips back here for Forsyth Park, you kind of, there you go, you have a grid there. So I think it's really, he did a great job.
Yeah, and then we can see how that simple grid he creates a massive public space in the center, and that kind of like radiates throughout the whole grid, kind of like what do you say, like altering the grid.
Right, yeah. It's using the grid to its advantage, but then altering it whenever it needs to make changes to the, master plan or the
yeah, which is something that we can look back at the Maritime Youth House, right? He has this simple grid, and wherever you need more space or more program, you simply adjust that area of the grid. But instead of adjusting that area and keeping the rest the same, like every little motion that you do or anything that you change
affects everything else.
So it's something that I think is very powerful, and it's a simple idea, but I don't think is an idea that's well known and not a lot of architects follow.
Right.
They typically adjust and they leave the rest the same, and there's no equivalent exchange when it comes to, I guess, altering projects.
See, look, a park broken down in a grid that's nice and works well. Take that, Shumi.
That park in France.
Parc de la what?
La what?
I don't know.
Yeah, so right here, this looks very different than like his typical diagrams, right? Like I definitely see a strong, like I would say, Japanese influence.
I was just gonna say
the way that this is showcased, which I really like, and I really appreciate the fact that he's kind of altering his presentation work and tailoring what he needs to show depending on his audience.
Absolutely. It's strange, he gets a lot of flack for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But he pulls off so many things well.
Pulls it off. He's a great public speaker.
And even if you don't like him, you could not like him or not like his style, but like you have to give him the props.
Yeah. He's a salesman.
Yeah. You have to be like that.
Yeah. So here you can see the autonomous vehicles, right? And they're not just cars, but they're kind of like these like retail stores or capsules that are constantly moving, but they don't only serve the purpose of transportation, but they also serve the purpose of like commercial ideals or retails.
Yeah.
Like here we can see this looks like a
retail establishment.
Shop, right? That looks like a ramen shop.
Yeah, it's like a kiosk, but instead of the kiosk just being parked somewhere, it's like this.
It's constantly
traveling, living,
it's constantly
breathing.
traveling. Yeah. There we go. I like that. So it's kind of like a breathing, living organism, right? It's no longer a city, but a new typology.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is like something he definitely touched on. Like I don't know if you watched the keynote, but I know he mentioned something like within that. Like when you look at the keynote, when you watch it, and you see him go from above ground to underground, and how the underground is like kind of like if you were to take a watch apart, the gears in a watch, and like being able to think of all these things at once is like super interesting. Like obviously he has other people and project managers and leaders that are obviously working on these ideas as well, but just the culmination of the talent in that office is intense.
And this right here, this is great.
It's a nice shot.
The way that he's
money shot
implementing, like landscape and natural elements throughout the city, and this like a detail like this. So the deer or like reindeers, like it's a very important animal in Japan. So the fact that he has something like this, something like a tiny detail that maybe not everyone knows, like I think it's very powerful. Like it truly shows, it symbolizes. Like it truly shows that he actually did his research, that he's tailoring the project to the audience. And here, this is that main public plaza.
Yeah. I don't know, the use of technology, the Mount Fuji, like this idea of like being like a craftsman.
Yeah, it's very technological, but at the same time, it's very primitive.
Yeah, right? I get what you're saying.
It's a really good, it's a really good combination of the two, and I think it's very successfully done.
Of like classical Japanese architecture with like
not even Japanese, just classical architecture. I mean, the idea of the piazza and having a city in a grid that flows around it, it goes back centuries.
It's architecture one.
And the fact that he's implementing that with like new technologies like robotic arms,
Yeah.
self-driving cars, autonomous kiosks that produce not only transportation for like the general public that are living there, but also like commercial spaces, retail spaces.
This idea, like this workshop right here,
Yeah.
like that kind of brings it all together. You like the point we were literally just talking about, like these, you look at these traditional joints or connections.
It's primitive.
And then you see a robotic arm.
Yeah. And
Like-
touchscreen, like I'm guessing holograms.
Yeah. And with the guys with the Toyota jacket, the only thing he could have done was had the robotic arms building a Supra with like an actual Toyota engine in it. So I think that would have been dope.
Are you trying to say that German engines are not Japanese
To
engines?
be in Japanese cars, of course. Of course, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so here we can see again that combination of like a primitive architecture with like new technological advances.
Yeah. Or like just classic details and like small things with really far-fetched, or what we thought was far-fetched technology, you know, only a few years back, just kind of coming into light and being like, hey, this is something that can happen and improve our lives. Which I think it's awesome to see architecture really getting in on the forefront of that. It's been doing it for some time, but like for someone like him, like a big time architect, to be kind of going at this stuff, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, give him props. I think he's a great architect, and I think he's an even better public speaker.
Yeah,
he's a really good salesman. He is really good at selling an idea and at simplifying all the problems within, I guess, like a project.
Yeah.
And giving an efficient and well thought out solution.
Yeah, he's not lopsided. He doesn't just think of one entity of the project or one portion and say, okay, I'll solve this problem, but I'll half-ass the rest of it. Like, it's all pretty well thought out. He's
very good at tailoring his presentation to not architects, which is something so important, right? Yeah. Like architects, we can all read plans, we can all read sections, right? But the fact that he's able to kind of like dumb down an idea and simplify things for like the general public that might not be invested within the field of architecture, I think that's a powerful thing that like a lot of architects don't really think about.
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
I think Big, he has his core principles. He gets a lot of flack. You know, he's not even licensed. I don't even think we mentioned that earlier. He's not even licensed, and he was able to
so he went to school, and then he dropped out after a year, and then that's when he decided to open up his I guess kind of like his company, where he started like doing competitions. You guys can look for him and Big, the Arch Ingels group.
But yeah, that's
that's all we have, I guess. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and this type of I guess architectural critique of.
Even though we didn't go that hard on Big this time. We didn't really give him the smoke. I'm
sure the one that's coming next is gonna get a lot of smoke.
You think so?
I think so. I don't know. Yeah. I don't really like these things.
Me neither. Yeah, and when you find out, like if you're a detail nerd like me, like when you find out that the details aren't really what they are, then
they're very arbitrary and they're only ornamental.
But yeah, you want to learn more about Big, go check him out.